Hey everyone, it's Heather Darnell and welcome back to my art channel. Well, the last 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, it has just been increasingly more stressful and crazy. And I know I even said that in the last video that I posted, which even feels like it's been forever since I did that one. But now that the time is growing closer and closer to when we leave, the move is really setting in now. I mean, our house is halfway emptied out and I even feel like I sound more echoey when I'm talking to you. It's just, whoa. But anyways, my son is also at VBS this week, which is a blessing. So that's Vacation Bible School for those who don't know. And he has gone all week for the better part of the day, which opens a much needed opportunity to paint with you. So today I thought we would paint a beautiful peacock. So I'm not really a bird watcher lover, so to speak, although I do love to hear birds chirping and stuff. I feel like it sounds so peaceful. I'd rather hear birds chirping than sirens blowing and cars honking. So take your pick. And the birds for me is my pick. Also, but if I'm going to paint a bird, I think I want to go for the peacock because they are so elaborate. All the blues and the other assortment of complementary colors that it has, and just the overall display of feathers. And even when it's not on display, you know, just the way it drapes over and follows it, you know, is so beautiful. And I couldn't be more excited to paint one of God's beautiful creations. So, but before we get started, today's ministry snack comes from the book of 1 Timothy, chapter 4, verse 8. And it reads, "For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come." Well, we all know that exercising is super important, and we all probably should exercise more than we currently do. And that's kind of for at least how I feel about myself right now. But if I want to get technical, I think I've been just as active packing and moving boxes and walking and doing all kinds of things as I would have been even in a gym. But I think a lot of us too tend to think that we're only going to get any kind of exercising, beneficial exercising, if it's only in a gym, which is not true. When Christ came here, there was no Anytime Fitness, there was no whatever major gym chain there is out here. It was just God's green earth. And the fact that Christ came to earth, he only used what was given to him, which was his 2 feet. Same thing as given to you and me, our own 2 feet. And we tend to dismiss the fact that our own 2 feet will take us so far. And that distance that it takes, not only will that really improve health conditions, but also improve our state of mind as well. So the two are very important, go hand in hand. But his message too was not just to focus on bodily training, because they do have some value. Obviously, as I just mentioned, you know, it does bring a lot of benefits for you. But godliness, being like God, being like Christ, is of more value than all the exercising you can do. And you guys, I wish I had that mindset a long time ago, because before my walk with Christ, I was obsessed with my body, and that's not a good thing. And if you are too, I really pray that you learn to shift your focus on Christ, because that will really mitigate every problem you have. As soon as you reach your hand out to his that's already reaching out for yours, will have drastic changes immediately. But you have to want that. Just like when I was training clients, or still training clients, I tell them, if you want the change, it has to come from you. I can't make you want anything. That desire has to come from you. It's a two-way street. I'm just here to help and guide you, but you have to want to make the change. So with a relationship with Christ, you're not going to have any improvement in your life unless you want that change. You genuinely want that change, and not just try it out, but really want it, because that's only when you will change on every level. But I was obsessed and not realizing that my relationship with Christ was really non-existent. And so I became obsessed with my body. And here's a dirty little secret. I've had body dysmorphia since I was 10, and really just overly focused on me. And that's not good. I've had multiple plastic surgeries, exercising 6 days a week for 2 hours, then some. I mean, I just could not stop thinking about how to get that perfect body, not already realizing that my body's already perfectly made in the image of God, just like yours is. And so that's not what Christ wants us to do. He doesn't want us to get hung up on our looks, because they don't matter. What matters is to stay healthy. But instead, I prepped for 12 bodybuilding competitions. I felt more of a need to focus on myself and get ripped, get jacked, all that stuff, which, by the way, I will say, at least I was supplement free, as in no fat burners, no pre-workouts, and protein shakes were like once in a blue moon. So I did choose a healthy lifestyle by choice because I wanted it. And Christ is not saying, hey, athletes are no good. By all means, he does gift us with a variety of different things and talents. But I just kept focusing on myself, and I was never satisfied. No matter how many trophies I won, no matter how many more inches or half inch, whatever I gained in circumference in my arms, I still felt empty. And you know what? My arms are completely different now. They are back to the same puny little arms that I had before I ever walked on stage to begin with. But I'm okay with that because I finally come to terms that it's the godliness that matters. It's the godliness that has more value. It's the godliness that's going to take me a lot further than my 2 feet here physically as an exercising state of point of view. Then, you know, it's going to bring me a lot farther. It's going to help me grow in so many areas, whereas your own 2 feet will only physically take you so far, but a mental state of mind that's like Christ will take you a lot further than you ever imagined and dreamed, and you will find yourself in a place so full of peace and love that you will never ever want to go back. And that's perfect too, because as long as you're in that direction, you're going to be in the kingdom of heaven with God, living on cloud 9 without having any worries of being obsessed with your body or anything else or any other tangible item that can just leave you feeling empty anyways. And we want our fullness and goodness from Christ. All right, guys, let's go to the table and get started.
I'm beginning my project by sketching in the main branch where the peacock will be sitting on, a little under the halfway point, and just make it sort of wavy going from thick to thin. Next, I draw on the main body of the peacock that's oval in shape and roughly the size of my fist. For the neck, I make it cylindrical with a slight bend and thicker at the base with a circular head, while the beak is triangular, but it kind of points downward a little bit. When I'm satisfied with everything, I draw my lines in darker so they'll stand out more when I paint. Starting with the background, I'm using my 1-inch tip flat brush or wash brush, and I'm filling it in with a 50-50 blend of blue, gray, and titanium white. I also added a small amount of GAC 800, which stands for Golden Artist Colors. That's an artist-grade paint extender that helps keep my paint going on smoothly without having to constantly reload or pick up more paint. I'll provide a link in the description of a Golden representative explaining and demonstrating this product. GAC 500 is also a good choice for an extender. If you haven't noticed already, I've hardly picked up any more paint while filling this in, which is so nice. My colors are opaque and the GAC 800 maintains the opacity, but I'm still going to give it a quick second coat just to make sure I don't have any thinner areas. Here I'm just using a detail brush to fill in the hard to reach areas. Onto the peacock, I switch brushes to my number 3 flat shader using the color Cobalt Blue Hue for the base coat. After a second coat, I switch brushes to my number 1 round brush using the color Titanium White to add some detail around the eye. Notice it starts about the edge of the beak, goes up and around a little, but doesn't touch the back of the head. The other part starts in the corner of the beak and sort of curves in the opposite way, again not bringing the white all the way back. The intent is to leave a gap in the middle to paint the actual eye. Now for adding additional coloring to the body, I'm still using the same brush, but now I'm mixing a little Cobalt Blue Hue with turquoise blue and painting in the area on top of his head around the beak, as well as bringing it down some right around where the neck begins. Here I'm adding Prussian Blue Hue under the beak and the bottom of the head for shadowing. I continue adding more coloring by mixing in Brilliant Blue and some Turquoise Blue and make it about as wide as the neck before I add in more Prussian Blue Hue at the bottom of the neck for additional shadowing. Now I'm just carrying down some more brilliant blue onto the lower portion of my peacock along with Mars Black, cadmium orange hue, and Prussian blue hue right by the tail for shadowing. For the eyeball, I'm using the back end of my 1-inch tip flat brush, stamping the color Raw Sienna in between the white followed by Mars Black, but I use a smaller brush to stamp the black in so you'll still see some Raw Sienna. Lastly, I add a touch of titanium white in the Mars Black for the reflection on the eye with my number 1 round brush. For the beak, I'm still using the same brush, but I'm using a mix of neutral gray number 5 and titanium white, but use more neutral gray in the bottom of the beak for shadowing. Now I'm finishing off the beak by adding the nostrils using Mars Black. Take note I only painted one since it's a side profile and place it between the eye and the edge line of his head. Onto the details on the back of its head, I'm still using the same brush and now I'm also just using neutral gray number 5. Take note I'm painting in various lines about an inch or so that start mostly horizontal. Notice I begin those lines about eye level and end about the bottom of the beak and they gradually go in the downward direction. Next I switch to my 3/16 deerfoot brush using Prussian blue hue, followed by turquoise blue and then ending with brilliant blue, just stamping in little puff-like details on the end of those lines, which is technically called a peacock's crest, and those little puffy details are actually little feathers. Another fun fact is that both genders have it, but according to theatlantic.com, it says that when a male shows off his trademark fan, the female doesn't just see him, she also feels him with special vibration sensors in her crest. So back to my number 3 flat shader brush, I'm now using titanium white and fill in his body, minus where the draping feathers will be. Now I'm adding in small details using Mars Black with the chisel edge of my brush. All I'm doing is going back and forth. In the areas that look more blotchy, I go back with titanium white, repeating the process to soften it up and even it out. Here I'm adding a little shading to the feathers on the main body using neutral gray number 5. Working my way down, I'm now painting in the branch using my number 6 round brush with the color Burnt Umber. I only do one coat because it gives more of a branch look rather than being evenly covered. I wanted to paint in a few extra branches. You can paint as many or as little as you'd like. I only painted a few because I don't want too many branches to be a distraction with the draping feathers or look too busy, especially with the other details I have in mind that I want to add. Back to my 1-inch tip flat brush, I'm using Mars Black as a base coat where all the feathers will be to serve as shadowing underneath them. Okay, onto those beautiful details on those feathers. I switched back to my number 1 round brush using an even mix of brilliant blue and lime green, starting from the top and only bringing it down about a couple inches or so. Now I'm adding in small scalloped details at the top of the feathers using Mars Black with the same brush and only bring it down a third of the way from the brilliant blue and lime green mix. When that's done, I use the color Deep Violet and paint in ovals that will serve as the outer edge of the feather's eye details. The next color inside is filled with lime green, which I do a few coats because I really want it to pop. Plus, any color on a dark background tends to dull the color you're painting on it, so the more coats you add, the brighter it looks. Notice my circles go from small to larger towards the bottom and only do about 3 rows. The next color inside is bronze, and I leave just a small trim of lime green. Next in line for color is brilliant blue, but take note I leave more bronze showing. Basically, the lime green and bronze are oval in shape, while the brilliant blue is more circular in shape. The last color that will be used is Prussian Blue Hue, which will be a much smaller circle than the brilliant blue circle. Finally, I'm adding in a small detail of brilliant blue that slightly comes into the Prussian Blue hue. Here's a close-up picture of the colors and feathers of those details so you have a better idea of what I'm painting and how. For the feather strands, I'm working my way from the bottom to the top using a mix of turquoise blue and lime green, still using my number 1 round brush. I'm working from the bottom up so that the strands that overlap look more natural. It's as simple as painting an outline of the eye detail on each side except bringing them down and around. Now I'm adding a light olive green for highlights in the feather strands. Next, I'm mixing burnt umber and titanium white to bring the tint down significantly to paint in the feather stems, going in a downward and slanted direction. I'm basically going for an off-white or slightly tan color. Here I continue to paint in more feather strands, but don't fill them in all the way like the rest of the draping feathers. I decided I wanted to add another bright color, but nothing too big or too bright, so I'm painting in pink flowers using the color Rose Pink. I'm not doing anything fancy, just 5 little petals, keeping it simple, especially because they're so small. And lastly, I'm using a Waverly stencil with a flat stencil brush to add in finishing touches as well as some nice contrast with the color gold. All right, check out the finished product. Boy, look at that. Talk about vibrant. And look how the bronze reflects in the feathers. It's such a neat contrast. And I'm so glad I added the stencil details. They really make the painting even more elegant and add to the color combination. All right, guys, this is the end of this demo. But if you're wondering, yes, I do list all the paint colors and supplies used in the description. So if you want to try it for yourself, go ahead and check it out. I really do hope you enjoyed this painting, and I would love to hear your thoughts or even how your painting turned out. So if you liked the tutorial, please be sure to not only share it, but to also hit like and subscribe for more videos. And don't forget about that notification button either, or you won't know when I have a new video posted, and that's just not good. But liking and subscribing tells YouTube that you want to see more of my work, and I really do want to keep providing you with as many helpful and hopefully fun videos too as I can. But more importantly, remember to thank God for this opportunity and always paint from the soul.